Okay, well, look, everybody, thanks for coming. And we have a small group tonight. So if somebody wants to stop and, ask a question on a certain point, just unmute and let me know that. And we can just stop. And then obviously, I would take questions at the end. So this is really a talk about, a little bit on how and when, but mostly just to go over places to photograph between here to the north, all the way up to Big Sur. So again, if you want a question, I, with one exception, I shot at all these places. So if you want to discuss things or ask questions for thinking about your own trips up there, that would be super. So I'm going to get started, and here we go. So contents, why do we want to photograph on Southern California beaches? Well, because we live here, right? And we don't have to take agonizing airplane connections and driving to get to South Dakota, for example. And they're beautiful. You can really get a nice image and see pretty things. So that seems like enough of a rationalization to me to focus on our local beaches for photography. I'm going to cover when do you want to photograph on our beaches? And I'm going to cover how would you do that? And then again, mostly I'm going to talk about different locations and options for where you can go to get pictures. So when? You're going to have your best light, obviously it's sunrise and sunset. Usually, not in every case, but most of the time, a low tide is best when you're shooting before better foregrounds. More rocks will be exposed and the water can be more interesting swirling around the rocks. And so usually you want to look for low tides. In the summer, your low tides occur generally at sunrise, not at sunset. And in the winter, November through February, the low tides will occur at sunset. So one of the reasons that Mike McCartney and I thought this might be a nice time to do this talk is because we are moving into the period of the year that is really optimum for photographing on Southern California beaches, unless you like getting up at 4:30 in the morning. So your low tides will generally occur in the 4 months, November through February. Tide pools, if you want to shoot those are best with the sort of in the middle with the sun somewhat high, but not overhead. And I'll talk a little bit about ways you can light your tide pools and get optimum images there. Holding out for nice skies, obviously, there's weather.gov or the Weather Underground. There's a bunch of apps that will help you check your weather. The weather.gov app is nice because you can put your cursor exactly where you're interested in your forecast, where some of these other ones, they only want to take a city. And it might not really be exactly on the beach or whatever where you're interested in photographing. So for detailed work, I like weather.gov. And the azimuth of the setting and rising sun can be an important part of your pictures. And I'm going to do a quick, I think everybody on this call knows about the photographer's ephemeris. So I'll just touch on this briefly. So this is a, excuse me for 1 second, I forgot to turn off my phone. This is a kind of indispensable aid that you should really know about if you want to get serious about your beach photography. There are other apps that you can use, but honestly, call me a baby boomer, but I just like to go onto this site and load it for the month and spot and print this out, and then I've got a hard copy for every day for the entire month that shows when the sunrises and sunsets and moonrises occur and when the low tides occur. So I think everybody can, actually, I've done it, they're not going to see it on the white background, but I'll just take a minute here. This is November, and in the northern Los Angeles area. So if you can take a second and look at November 20th, because we're going to talk about why that's an interesting day, about 2/3 of the way down, and then kind of move your eyes over. You'll see that on the 20th, there is a low tide. And a low tide is kind of anything, a half a foot and down, I would consider a low tide, or even a foot and down. And then a low tide is anything in the negatives, when the beaches and the rocks will really be exposed. So if you kind of move your eye over on the 20th, you'll see we have a negative 0.2 tide at 4:10, and sunset occurs at 4:47. So in terms of having a low tide near sunset, that's a pretty good day. So, and then as is the 21st, for example, on the 21st, your low tide is exactly at sunset. So these are the kinds of things to look for in planning your trips. And again, this is freetidetables.com. The site comes up, you pick the state, and then they give you some options for geographic areas within the state. And then you pick the month, and then you can hit, give me a PDF that I can print, and then you get this thing and you can print it. So freetidetables.com, I find a very useful source for understanding when optimal tides are going to occur.
Pete?
Yes.
Hi, I think I don't understand why there are two low tide columns.
Because every day you get two low tides and two high tides. It's a 12-hour cycle.
Thank you.
And you'll see that the low tide, the low tide columns are approximately 12 hours apart. Like right up at the top, you've got 1:23 a.m. and then 1:54 p.m. So 2 tide cycles every day. And by the way, if anyone ever can figure out why you get your low tides in the winter in the evening and you get the low tides in the summer in the morning, somebody tell me, because I've always wondered about this, and I've never been able to find out why. But generally, this is what happens. And then this is an example where you can see in the month of November, we're getting low tides at sunset. Okay, so I won't dwell on this other than to say, because I think, sort of looking through here, everybody on this, I think, is familiar with the photographer's ephemeris. So this is how we would use it to plan an image that I'm going to show you a little bit later on, with the moon setting over Moro Rock. And I think you can see my cursor. You can see it over here on the upper left. So, you know, we've got November 20th, and then down here at the bottom, see it here at 7:11 a.m. This is just after sunrise, which is 6:43 a.m. And the moon is setting about 40 minutes later. And you can see this lighter blue line, it's setting right over Moro Rock if you happen to be standing on top of Black Hill right here. And I think for some of you who've done field trips in the photo club before, we have gone up on Black Hill and shot from there. So you can see from using this that November 20th would be a day where you could get the image that I'm going to show you in a little bit. So questions on this? Otherwise, I'm going to move on because I think everybody here knows how to use this. Okay. How, just a few comments or pointers. You know, use filters to slow your water. How slow, that's kind of up to you. You can go anywhere from the cotton candy look to where the water is pretty well defined lines in it. And so take a bunch of shots at different speeds and see what looks, when you get back in post, see which looks the best to you. A reflector is a very handy accessory if you want to shoot in tide pools. And this is again where it's helpful to have some sun out so your reflector can grab the sun, bounce it into the tide pool, and it will definitely perk up the light in the tide pool, but without creating a lot of reflections that would be distracting. So if you like to shoot starfish and sea anemone, reflectors are not a very expensive accessory and very handy to do that. People can be very helpful for, especially if Christopher Broughton is judging, for both foregrounds and to create scale and highlight your main subject. So, or you know, a bird or something. So that can be a useful thing to do if you can arrange that, or if you have a friend there. After dark, there are definitely spots where you can get reasonably good night skies over a dark ocean. Abstracts can be fun, and I'll show you at least one example of those. And marine wildlife can be fun. And I'll talk about a couple of spots in particular. So there's probably other books, but this one is a really good one. And if anyone doesn't know about this book, I'll pause for a second. You can take a picture of yourself with your cell phone, or just watch the recording at some point. But he wrote this book a number of years ago, and it covers everything from about the Hearst Castle up to Carmel. And it's very thorough, has lots of good discussions, and it's definitely, you could consider it a Bible of where and how to shoot along the I guess southern or central California oceans. So I would again, if you get serious about this, either buy it or it's not very expensive. It's a paperback, or borrow it from a friend. Okay, so any questions so far? If not, I'm going to just go through some locations. So we'll go from south to north, starting with our local beaches, and then move up to more in the central areas around Moro Bay, and then into Big Sur. And again, stop me if you have questions. So El Matador Beach is a really nice beach, right very close to us. So you drive out on Canaan Road and turn north, and you're there in about 10 minutes. So a couple of things about it. It has a gated parking lot, and I have been somewhat hesitant to park in there if you're going to stay late, because they say they're going to lock it. So I don't know if they really do, but and it can fill up. So you may be forced to park along PCH, and there are parking spaces on the ocean side. They signed the area as no parking a while back on the mountainside. And I think maybe it was to stop people from parking there and running across PCH. But if you don't care about doing that, the parking does open up about a quarter of a mile north of the actual parking entrance to the beach. But parking is something that needs to be thought through a little bit there. This beach can get very crowded, so be prepared for that. But that said, there are lots of nice shots, and it's very close to us. So it has a little sea arch. This was shot, I think, around February, and kind of on a medium tide day. So that's something to look for. On a low tide day, this does not have water in it. So you probably, if you want this picture, you wouldn't want to go there on like a negative tide time. So that is an option, and many club members have gone down there. And for the God forbid we could talk about street photography, but I know a lot of I say that with a smile. I know a lot of club members have gone down there and shot people pictures that have been nice images. It would be unusual to go down there and not see somebody getting some sort of a professional photograph, either wedding pictures or engagement pictures or something. So there's a lot of activity on this beach. So nice beach. And then this is the Sea Cave, which is about 400 yards north of where you reach the beach from. I should add, on this beach, there's a steep set of stairs to go down there. And at the base of the stairs, if you go about 400 yards north, you can get into sort of a sea cave there. And there can be some fun images to be made there. You do need to do this at a pretty low tide. This is, I think we're in the negatives here, and more than a foot. You would be definitely, over your ankles to get into the cave. Also, don't do what I do. Be careful about bumping your head, because there are some spots in this that are low. And what else to say about this? But it's kind of a cool picture. Since our topic for September is, what is it? It's slow shutter. So I thought I would mention this is a slow shutter. I've got a 10x ND filter on, and this is probably 90 seconds or something like that. And that's why the clouds are so smeared. So again, this is where you're sort of using your planning tools. I was looking for a day that would have tide in the negatives and at sunset, and some nice and cloudy weather. So I use some of the apps that I talked about earlier to pick a good day. And as it turned out, I did get a pretty nice sky down there. So the Sea Cave at El Matador State Beach. Leo Carrillo State Beach has great tide pools, and it's very close, just a little bit up the coast from El Matador. So that's a nice spot for that. Again, probably want to tide in the negatives. And this is shot with a reflector. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Otherwise, the light would be duller. There's a decent amount of punch in this. So, you know, I'm on tripod up pretty close, and like I say, had a reflector to pump up the light in this one. So, nice spot for tide pools. I think it is a less good spot for seascapes, but again, you might find some things that you like there. So North Malibu has a couple of nice spots. There's a beach right across from Deer Creek Road. And then there's a spot I like a lot that is about a half a mile north, unnamed and unmarked, but there's a large pullout there on the beach side that it probably would hold easily 10 cars, and a set of steep, crumbling, falling away stairs to get down to the beach that probably someday will just collapse, and then I'm not sure what will happen with beach access there. But there are some nice rocks that like this that sort of lead out into the ocean that can form leading lines. So again, Deer Creek, the beach opposite Deer Creek Road, and then this one are nice spots for beach photography. And there are also some nice nighttime shots. So a couple of us shot there last year, and I got some pretty good images after it got dark. This is in October, where, and the idea here was to have the Milky Way line up with those rocks, so that the rocks form sort of a leading line going out to it. So you too soon will be able to take this image, because the same conditions will exist in starting in late September or October. You would want to hold out if you possibly can for Santa Ana kind of day, where a lot of the muck in the atmosphere is being blown out to the ocean instead of in your face. So that would be ideal. And obviously, if it's hazy or foggy, you're not going to get a good looking Milky Way. This day was an okay day. It wasn't really that great, but still got a pretty good result on the Milky Way. So North Malibu. So I have not been to Rincon, and I had to bum this picture off of Hutch. So we'll give him the photo credit for this, but a lot of times club members have shot there, and it can put together some great surfing pictures, and it's popular with surfers. And again, look for, you know, high days with high surf, and you'll definitely get people out there. Bring your long lens. And I have not seen these, but by reputation, it also has some nice tide pools, which you can shoot when the tide is low. And Rincon is, I think it's about 7 miles past Ventura, and has a big parking area, and it's a pretty popular beach. So Rincon State Beach is another choice. Now we've jumped up quite a bit. Montana de Oro is one of my hands-on or hands-down favorite places to shoot the ocean. It has great tide pools and great seascapes, and it's large, so there's lots of places to go explore. And I'm going to put up my email if anyone wants to. It doesn't have my contact info. I'd be happy to walk you through sort of the navigation around this park. But it is just a really good spot to shoot. It is a little bit, you would get off the freeway usually at Los Osos. So it's about 10 miles south of Moro Bay. And a really nice state park. And for hikers, they have some nice hikes in the park as well. So I would highly recommend this place, and you can get there in 2.5 hours. And again, you know, do your homework about tide conditions and sky conditions, and you'll probably get some good images. This is not a low tide. Otherwise, the water would not be coming up the channel, and these sea anemones would be exposed. And so I think this might have been a 1.0 tide. So anyway, great park for both tide pools, and then this is a seascape shot at this location. This was shot on a club field trip a number of years ago that the club did to Moro Bay. So great spot for seascapes and tide pools and general sightseeing and hiking. So this is the image that I talked about where you can get moonset over Moro Rock. And according to my calculations, you'll be able to get this shot on Saturday, November 20th. I think the moon is going to be on the right side of the rock, not the left side. And this one was shot, I think I shot it last fall, and from Black Hill. So if you get lucky, you'll have a nice clear day without all the haze and muck out on the horizon. And, you know, I did not get lucky. And the moon, I would have maybe gone for a composition with the moon closer to the rock, but it disappeared behind the cloud bank before that could happen. And even in this image, it's kind of hazy. So most of the time I've gone up to Black Hill and tried to shoot there. There has been haze, even in the winter. So kind of be prepared for that.
Pete?
But yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ollie.
Sorry. What's the elevation of the moon in that photo? What's your guess?
Not very high, because I'm up on Black Hill. You know, this is definitely under 10 degrees.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it might be more like 5 degrees. It's moonset occurred within 10 minutes. And it was behind that cloud bank within 30 seconds.
Is this twilight?
No, this is a moonset. So
I'm sorry, during the twilight hours?
Say again?
Is this during the twilight hours?
Well, twilight usually means in the evening, right?
Right, yeah.
No, a moonset picture is going to be in the morning. So this is a sunrise. The light on the rock is the sun rising behind me over the mountains.
Don't you have twilight in the evening also?
Hmm?
I mean, you don't have morning twilight?
Well, in the I don't know. I could be wrong. I always thought twilight was associated with the evenings, but whatever. So anyway, we digress a little bit. This is a morning shot. So it is a moonset shot, which would occur in the morning. And, you know, you're looking out to the ocean. This would be about, I want to think, this would be about south, you know, south or southwest. So the sun is coming up behind you and the moon is going down over the ocean.
What kind of lens did you use?
Yeah, I'm on the 150-600, and since I couldn't really zoom in because the moon was, I would have, again, got it all closer to the rock. And for that, I might have needed like 500 millimeters. This was probably around 200, taking a guess. So, but I would bring, if it were me, I would bring, you know, a long and a short lens, or a long lens with a lot of range. And if you do get lucky and there's not a bunch of haze, you could really zoom in and get the moon, you know, even like partially blocked by Moro Rock. So it's not, well, you can drive most of the way to the top of Black Hill, and then there's a easy trail that zigzags up the hill. And what's nice about that is you can you get some choice in your left to right positioning and some choice in how much of an elevation that you have. So anyway, Saturday, November 20th, you know, if it doesn't work out, don't blame me, but I think you would get the shot only with the moon on the right side of the rock instead of the left side. So questions before I move on?
Beautiful colors.
Yeah, it was great. I don't want to whine too much about the clouds because they lit up very nicely with
nice layers.
with the morning sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
So Pete, is Black Hill a park, or is that a public land?
Yes, it's public land. You're not on private. It's fully accessible. There's like a public parking lot, and then, like I say, a zigzag trail that goes up to the top. So it's a great spot. You have a nice view of the whole bay, and you know, there's no hassles about access or anything.
How far do you have to hike to get up there?
I mean, not very far. You know, I mean, there'd be a couple of zigs or a couple of zags, whatever you call them. And it might be to get all the way to the top. And I did not have to go that high to get this image. it might take you 10 or 15 minutes.
So if you use the 500,
Yeah.
you'll get the rock. Would you still get the rock in the picture? The photo?
If you were at 500, Kelly,
Uh-huh.
you would be significantly zoomed in here. You might be cutting off part of the rock.
Yeah.
Like I say, I think this is around 200. So
Uh-huh.
I was pretty wide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's a nice shot. You know, there might be some, I think I didn't bother, but you know, over on the lower right side, there's some cars there. There might be some, you know, dreaded man-made objects that you would want to clean out if those things bother you. But I thought the cars were pretty innocuous. The parking lot ends on the pretty close to the right side of the image. So nobody other than people, nobody can be out on the center and the left side of the rock.
Hmm.
So anyway, it's a nice image and you know, kind of fun to go do. So I'm gonna move on. So I have a separate section about wildlife, but since we're at Moro Bay, for any of you who like to shoot wildlife, I would strongly recommend renting a kayak, which there's a bunch of companies that do this. And carefully, you know, you and your photo gear get into the kayak, and the launching spots that I have used are, you know, maybe a mile from the bay. So it's not too far to paddle in a kayak. And we got some really nice shots of these sea otters munching on crabs. And they didn't seem to be bothered by us too much. I didn't bring the big lens because I was afraid I'd tip the kayak and, you know, bye-bye camera and lens. So I'm on the 24-240, probably at 240 on this, and with some cropping. You know, I still got in pretty good for these guys. And we got a number of images of these sea otters munching on crabs. So plus it was just fun to be out on the kayak. So kayaking on Moro Bay, and they seem to be all over the place. So you're pretty likely to get good shots. And it is, of course, a way to spend your photographic downtime in the middle of the day. And then this was also on the same kayaking trip where there were pelicans out there, and I got this guy taking off with the rock in back of him. So that's a really fun thing to do during the day while you're up there. Again, if you tip over your kayak, don't blame me. It is, we had a nice time doing that. Okay, moving on north, there's of course the old favorite, the elephant seal rookery. And the peak time for that is, you know, late November through early February, when it really, there's seals there all year round. And you can get, I think, interesting shots at any time. It's really easy. Just put your big lens on a monopod and stand by the fence, and you'll get seals doing some fun stuff. So, but there will be the most of them there during around Christmas time, plus or minus 6 weeks, when it really gets jammed with seals, because I think it's the mating season or something. So elephant seal rookery is a great spot as you're driving up north. So there's probably some things that I may have skipped over. That, again, go read the Douglas Stakely book. But McWay Falls, I almost hesitated to show this because it's really a horrifying photographic cliche. But you know, once you take a nice picture of it, it can be your photographic cliche, and it is certainly a nice setting. Again, you'll need a little bit longer lens, and this is you know, near sunset, probably in the winter up there. So a nice spot, and pretty easy to get to and get up and take a picture. You cannot get down to the beach, as far as I know. It's either closed or impassable. So people take this picture from a viewing area on a boardwalk up there. So McWay Falls is a nice spot. I promised an abstract, which I guess this sort of is. Garrapatta State Park is a great spot to shoot at. And again, it's discussed in the Stakely book at length. And so there's all kinds of overlooks, and you can kind of composure, a heart away for different images. So anyway, I like this one that I shot a few years ago. So Garrapatta State Park is another one. Pfeifer Beach, of course, this is, everybody wants to shoot the light beams coming through the sea arch. I will give you one important heads up about this. A lot of the literature on this says you really have to be there close to the winter solstice, like December 21st, plus or minus 10 days or 2 weeks. And that really isn't true. There's actually a much wider window on that. So you are really good, I would say a month or close to a month on each side of the 21st. And then the setting sun does line up right through that arch and shoots out light beams onto the beach. Most people take them up close, and I have a couple of pictures of that where they're shooting right into the arch. And those are certainly really cool pictures, but I saw this somewhere, somebody else had shot this, and I said, well, I can do that too. And it's definitely like a little different look at it. And so there's a bluff that overlooks the beach, and you can scramble up there and then shoot down on it. Again, don't fall off the bluff. If you do, don't blame me. But it'll give you a little bit different shot. It gets very crowded there, especially on the weekends around Christmas time. So, go on January 15th or in late November or something, and it'll be the same beach and much less hassle. And you have some chance of being there when there's not very many people. They had started to use a shuttle bus system there because the beach was so crowded. I don't know if that's still in place because the parking there is kind of limited. So if you want to go shoot there, I would urge you to try and research that. And if they are doing shuttle buses, find out how that works. This is about the parking lot is about a 15-minute drive from PCH, and the turnoff is very hard to find. So be sure you have researched that carefully and understand exactly what you're looking for, or you'll just wander around and never figure out exactly where you're supposed to be turning off at PCH. I can personally guarantee you there is not a big neon sign that says, go down this road to take wonderful sea arch pictures. So you're really on your own to kind of figure that out. The beach is also known, if you look right underneath the light beam, there's purple sand there. And I've seen lots of kind of cool pictures where the photographers have incorporated the purple sand in their images. And let's see, there is also a sea cave there. It's not really a sea cave, it's an arch, but you can walk into it from the land side and then look out to the ocean side. And you are at some risk of a big wave blasting through this thing. And again, if that happens to you, once again, don't blame me. So I would be very careful about just observing water coming towards you when you're doing this. And again, if you want to take this picture, I'm on tripod and definitely over my knees in water doing this. But you can get kind of a cool picture here. This needs a bunch of exposures, and I think I picked 3 of them and blended them together and manually in Photoshop. And also, again, you can see that purple color in the rock off to the left. So that can be something, I guess that can be something fun to incorporate into other pictures there. So questions for me, or should I continue?
So did you do focus stacking? Is that what you did?
No, I don't think so, Kelly. I think between trying not to get drowned and the fact that I needed, different exposures of different lightness and darkness, I think focus stacking was a little beyond me. And the distance to the, you really don't care about if the sky is sharp on this. The distance from the foreground to, I'm going to move my cursor again, to this rock right here isn't very great. So I probably just picked F16 and focused about here or something. And it's all one exposure, or all the same exposure with respect to the focus depth. And like I said, I probably took 7 images of different lightness or darkness, because the cave, the cave or the arch is dark, and over here it's going to be light, and it would either this would be black or this would be hopelessly blown out. So you really have to focus, I think, on an HDR type approach, and just be careful about where you pick your focus point and go in at like f16 or something.
Mhm.
Do you-
Thanks.
do you bracket moving water?
Well, what I did here, Orly, is I did this manually. This is an older picture, and it was before the HDR processing in Lightroom got as good as it is now.
Mhm.
So the moving water is just one exposure.
Right.
I think what I did is there's an exposure for this,
Uh-huh.
and there's an exposure for some of this, and this, I used a third exposure. And the water is all one exposure.
Mhm. So you just combined them by layering them?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, I took, yes, I picked the 3 I was going to work with, because I had
Mhm.
acceptable pixels in at least 3 of them,
Yeah.
and just put them on as layers, and then created a layer mask and brushed them in.
What would happen if you just bracketed and with the water, since you're getting a smooth water effect anyway?
How do you mean bracketed with the water?
Like they say not to bracket something that has a moving object. So when you blend it in HDR, you've got the issue with the moving.
Yeah, ghosting and stuff. Yeah.
So is there a concern when you've got fuzzy water or ghosty water?
Well, I think this image, again, I've never tried it, so I don't want to say this like it's a positive thing or a for sure thing. I think this image might be difficult to do in Lightroom HDR for the exact reason that you're raising. I think your water would just look screwy.
Okay.
So like I say, that was another reason I did this manually, was because the water is all one exposure.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me think. Anyway, let's see, move on here. Okay, so for the life of me, I could not find any pictures of Point Lobos, but I shot there. And if you're getting, Point Lobos is, you're practically all the way to Carmel. It's a fabulous spot. And see the Douglas Stakely book, and he talks about a number of locations in there. And, it has, it has some forests and some great beaches, and it has a bunch of rocks, and there's a word for this that is escaping me, but where the wind and the water have carved like little cavities in them that make interesting subjects. So if you're in the area and you want to shoot, definitely allow a few hours in Point Lobos, because it's really a good spot to take photographs in. And Stakely discusses this at length, so he can do a better job of it than I would anyway. And I'm sorry I couldn't find any pictures, but it's a good spot. And there's lots of wildlife opportunities up there. Some friends of ours own a home in Shell Beach, and so we spent an evening or two with them, and just right down the street from their house, and I gave the name of the street there. Indio Drive is a rim road that hugs the beach, and you can go down there, and there's a bunch of rocks that attract lots of pelicans. So it was a really fun spot. I think I spent 2 mornings out there taking pictures of pelicans, and you're not super close to it. So if you have a 600 or a 500 lens, you're definitely going to want that. But again, you can sit there, get it up on a monopod and pound away, and you'll probably get some nice images, again, particularly of the local pelicans. This one's probably at 600 with maybe some crop. So again, try Indio Drive and Shell Beach. Shell Beach, by the way, it's an obscure, I don't know if it's a separate town, but it's an obscure neighborhood or town of Pismo Beach, just a little bit past Pismo. And So if you're in the area, get out there in the morning along Indio Drive, and you'll see these rocks, and the pelicans will be there. So nice wildlife shot. And so I'm done.